Hey guys, how are you? I hope you've had a good week. Last week, we did a couple things I'd never really done before, and the response was really strong. So the first thing we did was a survey. We sent out a survey about my live events, about possible live streams, and man, you guys came back hard. Some great ideas, some kind words, and very, very much appreciated. So thank you for responding to my survey. I don't know, maybe Maddie will put a link up in case you missed it the first time. Maybe you can do it. And the second thing was we did kind of my comparing vinyls, my little vinyl contest, working against Michael Jackson number ones. Last week we did The Way You Make Me Feel. The response was really strong. You guys had some fun comments, and I thought I'd kind of keep the ball rolling. So that's what we're going to do this week. I have a new vinyl comparison and kind of the frustrating path it took me to get to it. So stick around. That's what we're going to be doing for the next little while here in the studio. So last week we did our little comparison or my little vinyl comparison, comparing The Way You Make Me Feel between Michael Jackson's ones, and back then I was using the History test pressing against Michael's original Bad album. So I kind of got psyched about that concept, and I thought it was kind of fun. I explained the whole process of how I did it and why I did it, and it really doesn't matter. It's just for fun. But I'm always curious how new vinyls sound, because the amount of time and care we went into it, and I don't think I'll go into it all again tonight. But if you want to go back and check out last week's podcast, I talk about this. This is what Bruce Swedien and I did during the History project. We would send masters to the pressing plants for the cassettes, the vinyls, the CDs, and the mini discs. Yes, we did mini discs. And they would send us samples back, and then we would test those samples and listen to them in the studio. And I have all these notes, literally. You probably can't see that. You probably don't want to see that. But all these notes, the one I opened up, rejected. That's pretty funny. Disc 3 vinyl from Gloversville, rejected. So that's what we did for the History album. And since most artists, I'm going to be kind of bold here and say probably no artist. I mean, I wasn't around in the 70s, for Steely Dan and Fleetwood. And I mean, some of those people that made just remarkably great sounding records, I'm sure, and that's where Bruce learned. So I'm sure people did put that kind of attention, before we did, but we poured into it pretty hard. So I did a couple things on my podcast, video, whatever you want to call it, last week that it kind of bothered me. One of them was, I don't know how many times I said the phrase popped out of the speakers. So that's forbidden. I'm not going to say the song popped out of the speakers. I said it too many times last week and it bothered me. Number two, it was very subjective. And what does that mean? That means that I really didn't set anything up. I did listen to that song very intently on my little listening system here. By the way, we're back in the music room. It's kind of fun to be in here. But this time, I went back to my buddy Bruce Swedien, in his book, Make Music Mine, on page, you didn't think you were going to tune in and hear a book reading, did you? But this was my life. You have to understand. So on page 166, no, I'm going to do 167, Bruce talks about setting up near-field monitors. Near-field monitors are like the speakers I have behind me. I have Callies, I have Tannoys, I have different speakers. I have Westlakes, obviously. And for this test, I've been using the Callies. I actually really like the Callies. I think they're clean, they're clear, they're not overly warm and soft. They're just nice, clean speakers. So when I used to set speakers up for Bruce, this is right out of his book, and I did this every time I'd move him into a new studio, we would bring in what's called an SPL meter. Now, I actually have an analog SPL meter downstairs, but this is a digital one. So you can, it's on your phone. It's no big deal. It's a free app. Anybody can get an SPL meter. And we would set it for the A scale, and we would set it for slow, and then we set it for a range of 80. Well, these don't really have a range setting anymore. It's just automatic. And then you play music. And the point is you're setting a volume and then you don't touch the volume. You've set it using a meter. Does that make any sense? So as you're listening to song after song after song, the relative volume coming out of the speakers is exactly the same. So I went back to good old Bruce and I set my speakers just the way that we used to. And then I went through. So this was going to be my plan. My plan was I wanted to do Dirty Diana. And so I was thinking about it, and I'm like, oh man, that'll be so much fun to do Dirty Diana, between bad, history, and ones. Well, unbeknownst to me, the history album does not have Dirty Diana. Now, some of you guys probably knew that as soon as I said it. I don't memorize the records quite as much as some of you. That's not an insult. It's just true. So then I thought, okay, Dirty Diana is kind of a niche song. I love it. It's a great song. But okay, we'll go a bit more mainstream, and we'll do Man in the Mirror. Big Siedah Garrett, Glenn Ballard song. Everybody loves Man in the Mirror. So, let's get started here on the Bad album. Man in the Mirror is cut 2 on side B. Go to the History album. Man in the Mirror is cut 2 on side B again. That's kind of ironic. So we're 2 for 2. Grab Michael Jackson number 1s. I'm thinking, okay, Man in the Mirror. Don't Stop, Rock With You, Billie Jean, Beat It, Thriller, Human Nature, I Just Can't Stop, Bad, The Way You Make Me Feel, Dirty Diana, Smooth Criminal, Bad, You Are Not Alone, Earth Song, Blood, You Rock My World, Break of Dawn, and One More Chance. Where's Man in the Mirror? How in the world can they do an album called Michael Jackson number 1s and not include Man in the Mirror? And it was really frustrating. And if I'm frustrated, can you imagine how Siedah must feel? Siedah, if you ever see this, I love you dearly, and I'm sorry, man. It makes no sense to me that Man in the Mirror would not make it onto this. It makes no sense to me. One More Chance? Seriously? Over Man in the Mirror? So I'm sure you guys might have some comments on that. I personally, I don't get it. I don't know why Man in the Mirror would be left off this collection. So strike 2. First, I couldn't do Dirty Diana. Then I was thinking I can't do Man in the Mirror. But Man in the Mirror irritated me so much, I thought I do have other versions of it. So I'm going to set this one aside for a minute. I hope you find this as humorous as I do. I went back. Here's the original Bad album. Boom, Man in the Mirror. Mixed it in 1987, and Bruce Swedien, Westlake Studio D, put his heart and soul into this. Glenn Ballard, Siedah Garrett, Michael. Boom, Man in the Mirror. That's the original. So we're going to be listening to that. Then, thankfully, on the History album, there it is. So remember, like I said before, the History album, and it probably is easier that I have the actual History album and not the test pressing. And I think when I talked about this last time, I kept saying 1994. We actually mixed this in 95. So it was in late 94, early 95. We mastered it in 95. And that's what we're really talking about, is the difference between the mastering of these versions. So the original Bad album was mastered in 87. History would have been the Man in the Mirror mix. Same mix, let's be really clear about that. Same mix would have been mastered 7 years? Yes, about 7 years later. So like I said last week, Bruce is a little bit older, Bernie's a little bit older. We're still under a crunch to get it done, but it was a kind of a different kind of pressure, if that makes any sense. So I'm like, well, I can't just do 2. That doesn't make sense. So don't don't laugh, but somebody gave me this is actually the Mexican pressing, Imprecio in Mexico. So this is the Mexican pressing of the Bad album. And unfortunately, I really can't, let's see. I mean, the lyrics are in English. Yeah, the credits are in English also. I don't think they credit where it was mastered. So I think they still say it was mastered at Bernie Grundmann's. But this would have come out of a Mexican pressing plant, and that's cool. Somebody gave it to me, and I thought let's put this in the mix since Ones was a letdown. Let's bring in Mexico. Then I really wanted to like this. The picture disc. I thought, nobody takes picture discs seriously. And I don't know where I get them all. People give them to me, and I don't know, is yours yellow? Were they always yellow? I can't remember. And I really had high hopes. I wanted the picture disc to do well, and we'll see how it does. So those are our contenders. I've got what I call the OG. It's going to be hard for me to juggle all these again. I struggled with it last week. So we've got I'm going to call this the OG. This is the Bad album. Then we've got Mexico. Mexico's going to be playing with us. Then we've got the History album. And then we've got the picture disc, which you never know. Maybe the picture disc will surprise us. So what I did was I set up my little, I don't know. We didn't have, phones and apps with, when I was working with Bruce. So I don't know. He probably would not have accepted this as valid. But I set it up. I had it on a little tripod. I went through all 4 versions of Man in the Mirror. And I played it from the kind of the middle of the song through the modulation, through the out choruses. And what I was doing is I wanted to see which of the 4 versions was loudest. Forget about fidelity. Forget about anything, subjective, personal taste. I was just going to see which one was the loudest. And it was kind of a fun little exercise. We'll talk about fidelity in just a minute. So the OG, Bad, 1987, the average, now, how do I explain this? I set my speakers to kind of an average SPL of about 78, something like that. And then I didn't touch the volume. So from then on, the record and the turntable did all the work. I didn't touch the volume. So that's why these numbers are going to be different from vinyl to vinyl to vinyl. I actually found this kind of interesting. The original Bad, the average SPL was 79.1 on the settings that I had here. And it peaked at 89.2. That's about a 10 dB swing. So it was hitting pretty hard in some of those peaks, and then it would pull back down to about 79. Maybe you find it interesting, maybe you don't. That's all right. The Mexican version. Where's here he is. Pepsi. What's that say? I need somebody to translate Spanish for me. Pepsi Eslo de Hoy. I can't remember what that means. I did take a couple of years of Spanish. So Mexican Bad came in at 78.6 and 88.5. So it was just a teeny bit softer than the original US 1987 version of Bad. Kind of interesting. The picture disc. Oh boy, the poor picture disc. He came in at 77 and 88. So in terms of loudness coming out of the speaker, and I didn't say the forbidden phrase, Maddie. In terms of loudness coming out of, he was pretty much right there with the big boys. He did good. And this is kind of interesting. The History version, so how loud History played at that exact same volume, was 75.7 and 86.7. So about 3 or 4 dB less than the original Bad album. And remember I talked about that? If you listened last week, I kind of broke that down a little bit. My personal feeling is that when they mixed Bad in '87, it was just in the thick of how loud can we make every song, every album. Well, the loudness wars never really stopped, but during that Bad era, man, music was just loud. I'm not gonna say the phrase. Music was, they wanted to get as much music into that groove as possible. Hey, you want to know a dad joke? How many grooves are on a record? You can think about it for a second. One. It's just one groove all the way. So the Bad album, when Bruce did the remaster of the History version, I don't think he was pushing the throttle quite as hard. And I actually think that's okay. I think the History version turned out really well. Now let's get into personal preference. So just like with The Way You Make Me Feel, I really sat down and I kind of dissected these 4 versions: the OG, the Mexican version, the picture disc, and History. What I came up with, it's pretty similar to what I found on The Way You Make Me Feel last week, except MJ1's doesn't have Man in the Mirror, which I just don't understand. But here's what I found. So let's go back to the OG version of Bad, 1987. These are the big boys. This was, when I was really getting introduced to the team. And forgive me if I'm repeating myself. This is Big Studio D, Westlake Audio, 7265 Santa Monica Boulevard. Rod Temperton, Bruce Sweeney, and Quincy Jones, Craig Johnson, Mark Hagan, Chris Carell, who am I forgetting? Michael Jackson, he was there. And, Jolie was there, Bill Bray was there, Miko Brando was there quite a bit. Wayne would pop in, the security guys, Wayne and Marcus, I think it was. And then of course the Slam Dunk Sisters. So it was the MJ family. And this record very much to me has a family feel to it. It's warm. There's food is important. Humor is important. The popcorn, we had the air popper. We had 2 air poppers upstairs. We had so much popcorn on this record. Michael loved that air popped popcorn, but then he'd still pour about a cup of butter on it. So it wasn't exactly healthy, but so this, my comments on this, when I really sat back and listened to it, the cymbals just seem a teeny bit softer. Now the cymbals they're coming out of Bruce's MPC 60 back then, MPC 60. So all the drum sounds are Bruce's sounds. Bruce and I sampled hundreds of drum sound, and I mean sampled, I mean played the drum and recorded it and edited it. So Bruce had these amazing drum sounds that he created primarily for the Bad album. And then we would go on to use them on subsequent albums after that. The cymbals were just maybe a teeny bit softer, in my opinion. The bass was just right where it should have been. David's rhythm guitar, just crystal clear on the original 1987 version. I use the word silky for the vocals. The vocals were just silky smooth. And then I used a phrase, I said the whole thing is just smooth across the spectrum. From the low frequencies to the high frequencies, it's Bruce Swedien 101. It's clear, it's smooth, there's nothing that kind of feels out of balance. It's just a gorgeous Bruce mix, and then that translated really, really well to the vinyl. So that was the 1987 version. Then we're going to skip ahead, and the product that was manufactured in Mexico. We would send different mixes and masters to like mastering plants in South America. I remember the whole Latin American market was huge. And obviously the Mexican market was also huge. I wish I could read this. El Disco, forgive me, I shouldn't even be reading this because I'm going to screw it up. El Disco es Cultura, I'm guessing that's cultural, Grabado and USA, Impresio and Mexico. So I think it means it was created in the U.S. and it was pressed in Mexico. This one, my comments were, and remember, this one's just a teeny bit softer than the original. Teeny, splitting hairs. I said, the cymbals are crystal clear. I kind of, with Bruce mixes, I always kind of dial into the snare drum, the hi-hat, the cymbals, and you can kind of tell if a record is well mastered if the cymbals are just clear and smooth, even if they're sampled cymbals. I thought the high frequency was just a teeny bit edgy on the manufactured in Mexico one. I use the word edgy. The choir was just a little raggedy, as Michael would say, just a teeny bit. But there is, and Bruce used to use what's called the digital delay, DDL. He would use a DDL on some of Michael's vocals, just kind of a quick little echo. And he didn't use it. He didn't overdo it. And I did notice on this one, the DDL was just crystal clear. Michael's delayed vocals on here, I don't know why. They were right where they should have been, crystal clear. So that's the Mexican one. Oh, the poor picture disc. I really did. I wanted Man in the Mirror is back here on side 2. I knew it would sound bad. No pun intended. I didn't think it would sound this bad. It was just awful. And I get it. It's made to hang on your wall or whatever. But I thought most of you guys are going to have no idea what I'm talking about. But when I was a little kid, this would have been, oh man, I'm gonna date myself, but that's not hard. This would have been like late 60s, early 70s. You used to buy a box of cereal. I can't, Honeycomb or whatever it was. And on the box of cereal, you could see it. There was a record right there on the cardboard. It would be like, I don't know, the Archies, maybe the Jackson 5. I bet J5 had one. And so you would cut this cardboard record out and play it on your record player, and it would sound awful, but it didn't matter. It was fun. It was on a box of cereal. You're eating your cereal. You're listening to the Archies or whatever. And I hate to say it, but that's kind of how this sounded. It was just unlistenable. I basically put 2 words next to it. I just wrote awful and terrible. I don't know what was going on with the speaker over. For you, the left speaker, it was just a terrible. I even have like different cartridges. I can change the cartridges in my turntable, and it didn't help. It didn't help. So the poor picture disc came in a very, very, very distant 4th. So that brings us to History. Very similar to last week. History was it was such a pleasure to listen to it. When I peeked over here a second ago, my daughter Hannah gave me, this is the actual vocal waveform of Michael singing Man in the Mirror. And she gave that to me actually it's the whole song, Man in the Mirror, the waveform. She gave that to me for my birthday or Christmas a few years ago. So Man in the Mirror has always been kind of a special part of our home. This was when I was first really starting to work with Michael, and Saida and Glenn came in and had that song. And Saida's told that story 100 times. I never feel comfortable, telling other people's stories, but you can track her down on YouTube very easily and hear her talking about, I think when she came into the studio, I think, what was the phrase she used? We did it, or this is it, or I forget what it is. Forgive me, Saida. But it was like she was presenting this gift, to Quincy and Michael, the gift of Man in the Mirror. When I listened to Man in the Mirror on the History album, so this is the one that we would have mastered in 1995, and this is the one where Bruce and I were in New York for, 2 or 3 weeks, getting test pressings back in and evaluating them and changing this EQ and asking for this. So we really, there's a word we used to use in the studio, tweezed. We really tweezed, the sound of the History album to make it literally as crystal clear as possible. So my notes when I listened to Man in the Mirror on the History album, and this is the, what you'd call the store-bought one, not the special test pressing. And I've kept this just in immaculate condition. It really, really sounds nice. So the first word I wrote was clear. It's just clear as can be. Michael's vocals, everything just floats right in the stereo spectrum, right where I want it. I did say, and this is kind of interesting, I did say the cymbals were not perfect. I know I get kind of weird about the cymbals, and let's face it, Bruce's MPC 60 cymbals are not, they don't really sound like John Robinson playing a perfect live cymbal, but I do know how they sound. And the History translation of Bruce's cymbals wasn't quite perfect. The vocals were spot on, just right where I want it to be. The digital delay, the reverb, the choir, Saida, everything. It's like I said before, it's almost like Bruce had rested a little bit. Bruce is 7 years older. I mean, it's 7 years between the original Bad album and the History album. So Bruce has aged, am I doing my math right? 80, 87, yeah, 88, 89, yeah, about 7 years between the two of them. So Bruce is a little bit older, Bernie's a little bit older, and maybe they're not quite as ferocious with the horsepower, and I know I'm repeating myself, but and then I just said that the bass is just rock solid. It's not too much. Remember on MJ1s a week ago, I think somebody just throttled that bass on The Way You Make Me Feel, but Bruce did not do that on the History album. And now I can actually be a bit more scientific. You can have your own science experiments, but that's how I chose to do it. So in terms of loudness, which one is the loudest? It's still the original Bad album, by about 4 dB by my measurements. It is louder, which is okay. That's what we were doing back then. In terms of fidelity, the poor picture disc, he comes in last, but he's fun. You have it on the wall. It's fun. The Bad that was pressed in Mexico, it's not terrible. It's really not. The high frequency, I think, was a little bit edgy, but other than that, it actually did a pretty good. Very similar to, I would say, the Bad album, which is what it is. It's the Bad album. It's just pressed in a different plant. The original Bad album that we did in '87 is right there, almost at the top. Some people could easily argue and say, Brad, that's the original. Of course, that needs to be the best. But I still go with the History. I think the Man in the Mirror mastering that Bruce and Bernie did on the History album is just spectacular. All of this is subjective. Well, most of it's subjective. But I would love to hear your thoughts. And, if you want me to keep doing this kind of stuff, I actually kind of enjoy it. It's kind of nice just to shut the music room door and sit in here and listen to some of these beautiful mixes. Coming up, man, we've got some really cool things on the horizon. We're going to be in Paris. We're going to be back at Abbey Road in just a few weeks in the middle of March. Got a really fun. I've been doing significant rebuilding. I can't show you stuff that's off camera. We're making a lot of the songs better, almost like what I'm talking about here, about making them just as clear as possible. I'm spending a fair bit of time going back and retransferring a lot of the songs that you love, that I love. I want my show to sound as good as possible. And so Abbey Road is going to be kind of the kickoff. So I get to teach, get to meet with a bunch of students there. And then we've got 2 full days of in the studio stories and then mixing in stories. So that's coming up in mid-March. End of March, we're going back to the Hit Factory, New York, 421 West 54th Street. Tony Black is going to be with me. And that's where this is from. I mean, we did most of the work on the History album right there at 421 West 54th Street. So it has a slightly different name now. It used to be called Hit Factory. It still says Hit Factory on the door, but now it's called Fount Studios. And it's going to be amazing just to walk back into that building. Tony's going to be there with me. You never know. We always try to keep a couple of surprises up our sleeves. And then I'm not ready to release tickets yet, but in April, we are going to Bucharest. We're heading for Bucharest, Romania. Cannot wait. We have an amazing group of people that are there. They're going to be working with us. I think it's going to be a really exciting event. And I love some of the Eastern European countries, and that one's going to be an absolute blast. So that's coming up in mid-April. Tickets are not on sale for that yet. They will be very, very soon. And then I can't go into a lot of detail, but we've got some fun things coming up in the summer. In August, I'm so close to announcing this. If you can be, no, you know what? I can't say anything yet. I won't say anything just yet. I'm going to leave it hanging right there. So thank you for I don't know. Thank you for just hanging out with us. We love doing these. Maddie and I are going to be doing more and more of them in the coming weeks and months. And we've got some good interviews coming up with engineers, different studio owners that we meet with. We're going to be doing more vinyl comparisons, telling stories, and then we've got live streams coming up. So appreciate you guys. Have a great week. Go compare Man in the Mirror on your own. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are, and I can't wait to hang with you in the studio again. All right, God bless. Take care. In the Studio, the podcast is produced by Maddie Sundberg. Theme music performed by Buddy Nuanez. Artwork by Andy Healy. Studio electronics provided by Golden Age Project, and studio acoustics provided by Acoustic Sciences Corporation. My name is Brad Sundberg. Thanks so much for hanging out with us in the studio.